Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the October, even though it is still in September, but the October Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee meeting. Call it to order, and our first item of business is we need an approval of minutes. Call on Vice Chair Jeff Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The minutes of September 8th, I reviewed those, find them in order, and move that they be approved as mailed.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item, we need to announce an alternate vacancy on the Board of Zoning Appeals to fill the unexpired alternate term of Joe Crowell to expire October 2012. We also need to announce the county coroner vacancy for Mr. Mike Nunley. Those will be taken up, of course, next month. And then next, now we need to fill 2 commissioner vacancies on the Agricultural Advisory Board. These terms are set to expire January 2011 and January 2012. We have received 3 applications for this appointment from Commissioner Carol Cook, Commissioner Will Jordan, and Commissioner Steve Sandlin. Everybody have those? Look at them. I believe all 3 of those commissioners are in the audience. And as we typically do, I know we all know the commissioners, but I think it would be in good favor to give them all an opportunity to speak if you willing to. And Commissioner Cook, we'll start with you.
Well, I've never served on the Ag Board in my 20 years of being up here. And I think growing up on the farm is, I've sent you all a application already. Growing up on the farm with a lot of experience in farming. And as I was telling Jeff Phillips the other night, I don't know what the corn and the cotton and all this, and the cows and the chickens and the eggs and the butter and all that we sold. We have armadillos now. If you want to go down with it, have armadillos raised. They're strong too. So, and I think I'd be an asset to the board. Thank you.
Ms. Cook, I believe you shared with me that you still farm.
Yeah, I still farm.
Explain.
I set the farm out in trees. After my father died, I had to learn to read the map as to where they were pecan trees, where they were hardwood trees, where they were softwood trees, or what kind of trees. I had to learn the terraces and all that from aerial maps. It's a job too. And I still have the farm. We still have it in trees. And I want to see if I can't find somebody that can market Yopons for me. It's a bush with red berries on it around here that everybody likes, but it's taking the farm over.
Is this the farm you grew up on?
Yes. It goes back, it was a land grant from the federal government in 1896. And my father was the 4th owner and the children are the 5th owners. So it didn't turn over very much there.
Is it here in Laverne?
No,
Florida.
Florida.
Oh, in Florida. Okay. I was thinking some of those things. Never mind. I'm sorry.
But I did raise chickens here.
I got you.
I raised chickens after I moved on into Laverne. I raised chickens, and that was my meat. So, thank you.
Commissioner Jordan.
I'm Will Jordan, County Commissioner District 3. I am a farmer by trade. I just came out of the cornfield a little while ago, up on a clean shirt. But I've got cattle and crops and hay and things like that. I've been on the Ag Committee 6 years. I've been off for 2 years. Term limit, and I was chairman the last 3 years. I believe I was on the board. And I just grew up in 4-H here in Rutherford County, and I'd like to go back and continue to serve.
And Commissioner Sandlin.
Thank you. I'm Steve Sandlin. I'm originally from Lincoln County, Fayetteville, Tennessee, where we born and raised on a dairy farm, milking cows, 200 head at a milking, and raising crops. And basically got out of that when I went to college. That was my reason for going to college, matter of fact. So, but love the farming aspect of it. Real big in 4-H. My daughter's in 4-H now, and want to continue in the ag field. So, and I'm a rural commissioner and been on the commission 20 years, and I appreciate your vote for that. And while we're on this, Mr. Chairman, I will not be voting for myself nor either the 2 in this realm. I don't feel like that would be that would be good for me to do that, being on the steering committee.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we nominate all three and vote for two.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
One expires in January, the other expires January the following year.
Next year.
Do we need to make some type of a distinction on that?
Yes.
We spoke about, the mayor and I spoke about that, maybe, is there a reason that they are separate years, or can we change that for them both to expire the same year? Anthony's not here, I'm not sure.
They're probably set up to be staggered like that. What if if there's one that received the most votes, then that one would get to 2012, and then the one that got the second most would get 2011? Does that sound okay?
Sounds good to me.
Do we need that in a motion? If so, I'll put that in form
I'll
of a
second
motion.
that.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please, ma'am.
Commissioner Black,
Jordan and Sandler.
Commissioner Farley,
Jordan and Sandlin.
Commissioner Gooch,
Commissioner Sandlin and Commissioner Jordan.
Commissioner Jordan,
Commissioner Cook and Commissioner Jordan.
Commissioner Phillips,
Commissioner Jordan and Commissioner Cook.
Commissioner Sandlin, Commissioner Coggin,
Commissioner Sandlin and Commissioner Jordan.
Commissioner Jordan will have the term until 2012, and Commissioner Sandlin until 2011. It was 6 to 2 to 4.
Thank you, commissioners, for your willingness to serve on this committee.
Thank you.
Next, we have to fill a commissioner vacancy on the Community Care Board, and Commissioner Cook is our only application for appointment. Commissioner Cook, would you like to say anything about this one?
I enjoy serving on the Community Care Board. I feel like I'm an asset to them. I know it's a liability to me because I'm always making something for them, because I make a lot of tablecloths for them out there and have a boat I bought Sunday for them. And I enjoy meeting with the residents, working with the residents. I've learned not to shake hands with them because they won't turn your hand loose. So, but anyway, and I feel like that I bring a lot from the county commission to their board. For an example, in purchasing, we found out that we were getting milk for the county cheaper than what they were paying. And I asked Mr. King to check with check with the county for that, and they got their milk at the same price we did ours.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm an asset to them. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve Ms. Cook by acclamation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mrs. Cook, and I can assure you, I know that you are an asset to them out there. I know Mr. King really appreciates your involvement. All right, next you'll notice item 5, we need to fill a commissioner vacancy on the Records Commission. You did not receive an application via email or through the mail for that. However, the mayor's office, the mayor and mayor's office has talked to Commissioner Robert Stevens, and he's indicated a willingness to serve on that commission.
So moved.
Second.
I should have said Commissioner Stevens. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Where's he at? Nobody opposed down here, sir.
Or letter than. Thank you, will be going out soon, I'm sure. All right, and next is the anti-litter resolution. Jeremy, if you'd like to come on up, and Mayor, if you wish, or whoever. If you all remember, previous year, or before the break, we took this up and brought it to the commission and asked to look at it for another 60 days, and so we've done that, and it's back before us. I believe we've received some proposed amendments. You have those in front of you, and at this point, I will just turn it over to Jeremy, and you can go over these proposed amendments or lead us wherever you wish. So.
Okay. I think most of y'all probably remember this. We drafted this from an express statutory granting that allowed us to have some kind of civil penalties or civil kind of something to ameliorate the litter. Kind of, I guess, a little background is that when we got this out, we had 2 meetings, I believe, and we sent it on to the county commission, and then there was a request from Mr. Russ Willis and then the Farmers Bureau, I believe, to hold it out for 60 days, let some people make some comments about it. The only folks that have made a comment is the newspapers, and via Mr. Russ Willis, their attorney. The proposed changes are more of a policy decision, and I'm kind of just offer that as the caveat to begin with. And I'd like to visit with y'all what impact I do think that these proposed changes would make on this bill, on this resolution, and then I'll be available for comment or any questions. And Mr. Russ Willis is here, and if the steering committee would like to hear from him, he's available. Essentially, what's going on in this situation is that they are seeking for us to alter our definition of newspaper and our definition of non-commercial handbill. And here in a few minutes we'll talk about why that's a kind of a critical distinction in this situation. Right now we have defined newspaper as any newspaper of general circulation is defined by general law. Any newspaper duly entered with the Post Office Department of the United States in accordance with federal statute or regulation, and any newspaper filed and recorded with any recording officer is provided by general law. And in addition thereto shall mean and include any periodical or current magazine regularly published with not less than 4 issues per year and sold to the public. The general circulation language is taken from Tennessee law, kind of defines what a paper of general circulation is. So there are newspapers that are not newspapers of general circulation. So it kind of limits what a newspaper is under this resolution. The suggested resolution here, suggested amendment, is after any newspaper, it becomes published at least weekly, intended for circulation among the general public, containing news matters of public interest, and is in the form of a newspaper or any other newspaper of general circulation. What that, in my opinion, means is that this is a much more inclusive definition of what newspaper is. So we don't just say, is it a newspaper of general circulation? And I don't have the specific what this would cover and what this wouldn't cover necessarily, but it's much more expansive. And then in the definition of non-commercial handbill, you'll see that newspaper is deleted from the comments of the newspapers. This has a fairly critical application and change for our Section 11, Section 12, and Section 13 of our anti-litter ordinance, especially Section 13. By redefining newspaper and eliminating newspaper from non-commercial handbill, it essentially is taking out these newspapers that would not have otherwise been covered from the jurisdiction of this resolution, meaning that if it's not a newspaper of general circulation as defined by law, they're going to be free to distribute this to folks' homes. And the Section 13 is the section that we spent a little bit of time on in one of the previous meetings. And as you'll see here at the bottom, the last sentence, it says, "No person shall place on, deposit, or leave exposed in any private yard or driveway any unsolicited newspaper, handbill, or material after the owner or occupant has made a written request that the same be stopped, which request is addressed to the publisher of the unsolicited material, and which request identifies the name and address, location of the owner or occupant who does not desire the material." So in this situation, if there is a unsolicited newspaper, if we take newspaper out, unsolicited newspapers can still be placed at the premises of Rutherford County citizens without this applying. So they can't opt out of a unsolicited newspaper.
Where'd the changes come from?
This is from Mr. Russ Willis, who's an attorney for Daily
Oh,
News
okay.
Journal in Tennessee. And so that, I'm telling you
I understand that.
that these are his suggested
Yeah,
changes.
yeah.
Now, from a legal perspective, I think that y'all should be cognizant of a couple different issues. Is that there is a potential First Amendment issue because it's newspapers. With that being the case, we might want to be a little bit sensitive to the fact that it's a newspaper. Now, that being said, I don't know for sure whether the First Amendment means that folks can throw newspapers that you don't want on your property. So that's kind of where we are in this situation. We can leave it as is, and I don't think that it's truly a huge problem, or we can adopt this, but it's kind of for you guys. It's for you guys to decide. It's a policy decision. Do you want unsolicited newspapers to be governed by this litter resolution, or do you not want them to be?
I think the original statement from Commissioner Williams was about the newspapers. I mean, I think that's where I think it started. And then it kind of rolled into more, but I think that was definitely one of the main parts of this puzzle that we're trying to put together. And I think if we take newspaper out, then we've defeated our purpose in what was being written. Not that newspaper is all of what we're trying to do, but it's definitely part of what we're trying to do as far as litter and unwanted papers thrown at whoever's door from the complaints and calls and whatever that the other commissioners have come up with and told us about. So
That, I think, Commissioner Sandlin, and also there were a couple of public comments over the last couple of years,
Yeah.
and I think that's what those comments were talking about, were pretty much newspapers that were being thrown in driveways that, and they tried to get them to stop to no real avail, I guess, and
Yeah.
I think that's what those public comments, does anybody remember those
Yeah.
public comments before our commission meeting that dealt with litter in the newspapers? That's how I remember it, and I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't remembering something that was wrong, but I remember Mayor Burgess, is that?
I really can't say that I remember that.
Okay. Then maybe I'm wrong.
Are you saying that I mean that we may have a First Amendment problem by putting newspaper in? I think anybody that's ordered the paper or paid for so many months, a year, or whatever to get whatever paper there is, they're not going to have any complaints. They don't have complaints because they want it and they hope they get it. I think it's the ones that don't want it or not want it, and then it keeps getting thrown in their driveway or yard or whatever, and then it keeps getting run over. And some of these subdivisions, nobody picks it up, and it may be some of the ones that's actually bought and ordered the paper for a year, month, whatever, and they just never pick it up, and they keep running over it, and it gets all mangled up and out in the street, blowing around, and you know.
This section 13A is expressly limited to unsolicited. So if you've ordered it, it's not coming in here. Now, I guess there are a couple things to keep in mind is that if newspaper is included here, that does not change the fact that the homeowner that has the property has a duty under this resolution to clean stuff up. Now, again,
Could you repeat that again, what you just said?
In this situation, we've already defined in the rest of it, that homeowners, people who own property, have a duty to keep their property clean from litter. So an accumulation of these type of things could be dealt with in that fashion. And additionally, there's nothing on the books now, so instead of opening a floodgate, this is more of just maybe not closing one all the way. Again, this is for y'all to decide, but it is an issue because it's a government regulation that does potentially impede a First Amendment right. Now, again, do you have a First Amendment right to throw stuff on folks' property? Well, I don't know.
Does the ordinance on 13A suggest that you can opt out of unsolicited newspapers, and the amendment says you can't opt out?
That's correct. Unsolicited in the initial drafting, you are capable of opting out of a unsolicited newspaper by giving written notice that, hey, I don't want this anymore. Under the suggested changes, you don't have they don't have the option to, I guess they can still try to opt out, but it's not punishable under our resolution if the newspaper declines to abide by those wishes.
Well, I would say that the property right constitutional question would overrule a newspaper wanting to throw something in the yard.
First Amendment rights are generally treated with extreme reverence in a way, and it is a dual. You're correct in that it is a dueling element. That what is, you know, you have a private right to private property. Folks can't trespass on it. Those types of things. Again, I think that there could be a potential private cause of action if, for unsolicited newspapers keep getting dumped on your driveway, but this is a government regulation.
What unsolicited newspapers do we have here in Rutherford County?
That's not, I don't know. I think that I've heard maybe Rutherford AM, but I don't even know. Honestly, sir, I don't know the answer to that question.
I remember years ago there used to be a publication called the Merchant's Advocate. You may be familiar with it. And they would throw it out in the yards, I think a newspaper with ads. Is that considered a newspaper?
Well, under the probably not, even under the expanded definition here. But again, part of this whole thing are what are the hallmarks of a newspaper? It's kind of debatable, and that's why if it's general circulation, there's fairly clear hallmarks on what general circulation is. With this, the published at least weekly. Well, we know what that is. Something that's published at least once a week, intended for circulation among the general public. Well, that has to do with what the newspaper intends. And then containing news matters of public interest. What exactly does that mean? I mean, what is public interest? So we start going down this road a little bit, and is in the form of a newspaper. What exactly is a newspaper? I mean, is it, you know, is it the, so that this more expansive definition, I mean, in a way we could, it has been, we just got this recently. Mr. Willis did not realize that this meeting was this evening. So, I mean, I guess we have the potential to try to figure out if there's a better phrasing.
Who's Mr. Willis?
Mr. Willis is right there. He's the attorney for the newspapers.
Jeremy, let me ask you a question. I mean, the definitions that are here makes it more expansive, of course, but really that's not the issue that's really troubling, is it not? Isn't the deletion of the ability of the property owner to opt out, isn't that really the only thing that's really creating a substantial difficulty with respect to these changes, or not?
Well, that is the difference, because newspaper used to fall under Section 13 if it was a kind of a newspaper type document that was not a newspaper of general circulation. Then it got bounced down to the non-commercial handbill. The non-commercial handbill is then in Section 13. That's why the unsolicited newspapers were there. And so that's true. I mean, truly, it opts it out. Did I answer your question?
But if the owner could still opt out, then it still would not put an extra burden on that person to have to clean up necessarily if the delivery was stopped. So I don't know. I guess from a practical viewpoint, I can sort of see why they want to opt out, because maybe if you're putting these newspapers, quote, in every driveway, it would be difficult to decide or determine which driveways you were not supposed to put them in. I guess from a practical sense, that's what you guys are considering there, Mr. Willis. Practically, it'd be hard if a person wanted to opt out to really properly identify those people and stop those deliveries at that location.
I'd be happy to address some of the questions.
Come on, stay in the rules and let the other attorney come in.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to suspend the rules?
I suspend the rules to let the attorney come.
I don't see the change as being all that different. When I read the initial resolution, I saw section 13, and as I read that and looked down at section B, it said this was not intended to be something that was addressed to newspapers, exemption for mail or newspaper. And so when I saw newspaper in the 13A, if it's defined the way we've defined it, then it's also being exempted down here in section B. So I didn't see the reason to put newspaper in A and then exempt it in B. Now, if it's not a newspaper, as defined in here, then 13A would apply to anything that's not a newspaper. And the definition that I gave you is simply a definition from the only law case that's been reported out there. And I took it out of that case. And I provided the Attorney General opinion that deals with trying to come up with a generally accepted understanding of what a newspaper is versus some non-commercial or commercial piece of paper that's being put out onto the on people's front steps or handed out. So I took that definition from Cook versus McCullough, which is a middle section Court of Appeals case decided in 1989, which defined the Nashville Record as a newspaper in the sense of state law. And there really is not a easy, clear understanding of exactly how Tennessee defines newspapers, but there are some parameters. And so I took that language out of here, and it just said that the Nashville Record is a newspaper in the sense of the applicable state statute. It's published weekly. It's intended for circulation among the general public. It contains matters of general interest, which is news, and it's in the form of a newspaper. So that's why I put that language in there, because I was concerned with what it actually means to be a newspaper of general circulation. When the Attorney General was asked that same question, they cited this case that sort of had a multiple criteria that meets what a newspaper is for what Tennessee state law would recognize as a newspaper. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that we have what you and I would always call the newspaper, the Daily Journal, that has actual public information news that's circulated on a weekly basis at least, and it's not a commercial advertising document. It has actual news of public interest, which is where the First Amendment really comes in. You know, we are here to inform the public, keep them informed, let them know what's going on. And that, I think, is important. This unsolicited newspaper, as I understand it, every now and then the newspapers will give you a newspaper or the AM in the hopes that, one, you'll see some things in there that you like and need to know about, and that you will turn around and order. My clients are not in the business of giving it away forever. They're not interested in going out and putting a bunch of newspapers down and not get paid for it somewhere along the line. So if there is somebody who says, I don't want this anymore, we certainly are available to take care of that problem. It may not be the first phone call that we get on one property, and I apologize for that. We've had those. But we hand out, I think, several tens of thousands of documents of newspapers. So along the way, we're going to make a mistake. It's not our intent to harass any citizen out there who gets this paper and doesn't want it. So we'd like, and we have a very good, and I can tell you a little bit about it. Mr. Oppman's here. He can maybe tell you more about it. We have a very good system now in the last 2 years that audits all these newspapers being delivered. And when someone complains and says, I don't want it, we have this system in place that really goes out and checks and makes sure that that person's noted and that publication is stopped. So I don't think the changes are all that significant, and I think they're consistent with state law, and I think 13A, as I understood it, was never intended to address newspapers as defined by state law. Any questions, I'm happy to answer or talk about.
Well, let me ask this question. If we were to, Jeremy, if we were to take out the newspaper part in the, he's talking about 13A, would that suffice and take care of the problem that y'all are talking about?
We only suggested 2 changes. That was to the definition of newspaper in section 2. And then 13A, because it named newspapers as a non-commercial handbill. And then 13B said this is not intended to apply to newspapers. So I didn't see the need to put in newspapers when it wasn't intended to apply to newspapers as defined in here.
I think his points are well taken, but I didn't draft this document. But this unsolicited piece, I think the linkage between unsolicited newspapers and handbill and then that exemption, the exemption, I believe, in my mind's eye, was for solicited newspapers. We're not going to the people that subscribe to those. I don't know, Jeremy, I do hear exactly what he's saying, but was there some intention for this to direct anything that was unsolicited? That's what 13A seems to be talking about.
It's 13A is limited to the unsolicited. It's only unsolicited. I mean,
So it would be an unsolicited newspaper that where the news journal is charging somebody.
But that'd be exempt under 13B.
Right.
Anything that
So 13B takes care of that.
And he says they do have a process whereby they can clearly identify those people that don't wish to receive that. But anyway, that's the only thing. I don't know what the intent of was in 13A.
Yeah.
I don't think the problem is with the newspaper like the Daily News Journal. I think it's some of these others that just throw it out in your yard, and it may be a newspaper, but I think it needs to be where someone can opt out of that. And that's their only recourse, is to call up whoever and say, I don't want this publication.
Well, I think that's some of them too. I mean, y'all own quite a few different companies, not just that. So I think you were talking about a paper that you have that is free, but not for long. I mean, it's just maybe one distribution kind of thing, and then maybe later on, because you want people to join on and start ordering that paper.
The Rutherford AM is what I understand to be the one that maybe is circulated a lot more broadly than the Tennessean. That is a free publication, but it contains the news. And as I understood, handbills are not newspapers, whether they're commercial or non-commercial. Those are advertising throwouts that these people put out there weekly, monthly, whatever. But they're not newspapers because they don't contain general news items that's intended to predominantly be news. Now, every paper carries some advertising, but as I understood 13A, it was addressed to that unsolicited commercial handbill. And then 13B doesn't say newspapers that are purchased or ordered. It says the provisions of this section shall not apply to the distribution of mail by the U.S. nor to newspapers as defined herein. So I'm just confused with the effort to include newspapers. And I understand the unsolicited part, but clearly any property owner who wants to call up and say stop delivering to whoever is the publisher has that right. And we have no right to put something on private property. But this is a litter ordinance that is intended to address when pieces of newspaper or other things are thrown into the street or work themselves into the street to keep it clean, and to be able to enforce that against property owners who don't clean their property up, or when things go into the public domain, to address that problem. I don't think, and I've never heard any comments that the commission was looking to regulate newspapers. Simply litter and unsolicited handbills seems to be the real focus, whether it's commercial or non-commercial. And newspapers are just different. And that's why the definition of newspapers doesn't fit within the non-commercial or the commercial handbill. And I thought that's where you guys were really interested in, is trying to get that commercial aspect or non-commercial, non-news worthy items inside this litter ordinance. And that's why 13B doesn't have any provision other than doesn't apply to newspapers as defined. If the intent is to apply to newspapers, then that causes me a much more concern with the First Amendment right to publish and to get public information to the public in a timely manner. And I don't know how many complaints you've gotten over the years about newspapers, not the advertisers and the freebies that come out, but actual news journal, Tennessee and AM.
Well, I think it's all wrapped up into one ball of wax. Newspaper,
Means a lot.
even myself, the handbill is considered a newspaper, and I think that's what the general public is telling us. Newspaper, they're considering everything that's thrown out in their driveway that's rolled up, maybe put in a bag, maybe not put in a bag or whatever. That's a newspaper, period. Whether you call it a handbill, whether you call it a newspaper, it's a newspaper in my driveway that I don't want,
Right.
or at the edge of my property or in my bushes or whatever, So that's the general.
And I'll tell you too, that if we put that in the mail on second-class delivery, this ordinance would exempt it also. So it could be unsolicited, delivered by the U.S. mail, and it would be exempted here. So I've had this issue in Davidson County, and I think in the end it was a nightmare to try to figure out how to not infringe upon the First Amendment rights of the news to be disseminated in a timely fashion, and call out the people who seem to be the ones who are continuing to paper your citizens. It's not the newspaper.
My biggest reason in the past for supporting this had nothing to do with newspapers. My biggest thing in the past was our codes department has had their hands tied on numerous properties as far as just trashy property that people, I know there's some in my district right now that the county attorney's office has been dealing with, the codes department has been dealing with, and I mean, really and truly, the newspaper wasn't my issue before. I was more worried about getting giving the codes department the teeth to be able to take care of those type of situations. And I understand too. I mean, if people's throwing unwanted newspapers in my yard that I didn't want, I can and it get strung all over the neighborhood. I mean, I can see that being a problem for some people.
Well, I will also say too, in my opinion, if you ordered a newspaper and you let it sit out on your driveway and collect day after day, this ordinance can enforce that property owner to clean it up, and it would not infringe upon our distribution. And so if that's a problem, this ordinance would address that, even with our changes in it.
This ordinance applies to Rutherford County, not the city of Murfreesboro. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's everything that is outside of the incorporated city. So if it's Rutherford County governed, that's it.
Okay.
It allows for specific agreements to be entered into between the county mayor and various cities, but whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know.
Since I work for the Murfreesboro Post on a part-time basis, I'll have to abstain from the vote, but I'm not going to abstain from comments. I think what Commissioner Phillips was talking about, we did have a gentleman come to the county commission and with pictures in tow. And he, I believe he was either from your district or your district, I believe.
Probably he is.
Okay. Commissioner Goods' district. But at any rate, he was on the dividing line. And if any, all of us in here have looked at these maps, and sometimes it's very difficult to tell where a person lives in the city or the county, in that particular area of town. And there's some islands, so forth. Well, the Murfreesboro has in fact delivered. And this gentleman was in the county. And he should have, I guess, called, or maybe he did. I don't really recall. But so that they made a mistake, in other words. But they do not generally deliver. Generally doesn't even cover. They don't deliver to county areas except in rags. Now, in the city of Murfreesboro, which I can definitely comment on, I get the Nashville Tennessean on Sunday. For some reason, I also get it on holidays. They send me a free issue, which I really appreciate. You might pass it along. It's very nice. But you know, there it is. I didn't ask for that, but there's no problem with that at all.
I won't get it anymore.
I've read my last issue. But we also get a number of other items which seem to come sporadically in the city of Murfreesboro. But if this applies only to the county, I'm not sure that this is much of a serious problem. A problem, though, is what Commissioner Farley did comment on, and that's not Tennessean's fault, or the Post either for that matter, and that is that somebody moves or somebody just doesn't clean it up and they begin to stack up and they do look awful. Well, I mean, you know, they got to take some responsibility, and if they paid for it, you're going to keep delivering it. And I understand that. So that's the city of Murfreesboro, not the county.
And Mr. Willis is correct, as I mentioned earlier, that if we have problems with somebody that's just letting them accumulate, that's an issue with that. That's the issue with the property owner. So, again,
We still got that handled. I mean,
it's still handled, and this is, again, as I said from the onset, that I do think that I have not looked at Cook v. McCullough as far as that definition is concerned, but it is unsolicited newspaper. It does make a change. And as Mr. Willis has also said, they don't have a right to just throw papers on your yard, and it's not a very wise business decision, as he also mentioned. So in the end, what you guys want to do with this is fine. If unsolicited newspapers is not a huge issue, that's fine.
Well, we still have the ability to remove garbage, refuge, and rubbish. That's still in here. That was one of your primary concerns.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't change any of that.
Right.
Mr. Willis, did you, I believe the county attorney's office forwarded you a copy of Murfreesboro's resolution?
Yes.
And my understanding was this was taken on, not verbatim, but pretty close.
It is close to it.
What did they have in theirs regarding this?
It is very similar to what you have, and I will say that matter got passed before we really had a chance to comment on it, and if we had, we'd be having the same comment. I think it has generally the same language as far as definitions go, and as far as the opt-out provision. I'm not sure if that's in there or not.
Okay.
It is a concern to me with what the city has passed, although it hadn't seemed to be much of an issue as far as the enforcement goes. I haven't heard any complaints, but I only get called when somebody has filed some sort of citation and the carrier is brought into court and we get into all that.
I was just curious if they had done something a little bit different that we weren't looking at. So.
Mr. Coggan?
Yes, sir.
Two things. We don't know what business decision a person might make, or another newspaper 10 years from now, or 5 years from now. They might decide to start delivering everywhere, all over the county. You just need to keep that in mind. Second thing is, much more important, Commissioner Cook has a comment.
I don't know where is it. I know Rutherford AM litters both of my drives. It's pickup every few days. And I will bring one of those throwouts to the county commission to let you all see what it is. But why can't we have, or why can't they put a notice in that paper saying, okay, put a little piece of paper in there, you don't want this, call us, we'll take you off. And that we have called and called and called, and they deny taking them out. And that's in the city of Laverne.
I don't think we would have the authority to require that kind of notice to be placed in a newspaper. So I don't know if that's really a legal option. So that's.
She has a promise from the head.
As I understand it too, both Tennessee and the Daily News Journal.
I'm
so sorry.
In that, on the outside of that paper, there is a wrapping, and on that wrapping it says, if you don't want this, please call this number. So we've heard this before, and I think they're trying to be proactive in letting you know, here's a number to call, here's somebody to talk to. And I think in the last 2 years, we're doing a whole lot better job of actually getting the phone call in, making the notation, and the change getting to the driver who's delivering. But I have somebody at the Tennessean who's up to speak and come in and tell you the error rate they have on this. They do go out and they monitor at least every other week, every delivery of every piece of property in this county. I believe that's every other week. Certainly once a month, somebody has audited every route to ensure that that person is supposed to get it, and there's been no complaint or a stop order put out. So we've heard this in the past, and the technology is catching up, and we're doing a much better job of controlling our costs, because it doesn't do us any good to deliver 10,000 that people don't want. We want 10,000 to say, yes, this is great.
Yeah. I think we sort of have to weigh the total package. I mean, it's not a perfect package, and I'm not sure we can get one first iteration. It may take an iteration or two. I think what we would want to do, the enforcement of this is going to be a bit tedious and difficult. And I don't think we would want to be aggressive on enforcing against the property owner those pieces of handbills or newspapers that have been put there. I think we would want to be somewhat tolerant of the fact that maybe it's not his fault. Maybe he has asked these people to not deliver those. So I think it would put a little bit of a responsibility on us to not be overly aggressive on enforcing this until we see how this is working and see how the people that are delivering these unsolicited newspapers, if that occurs, and how we would deal with that. So.
Well, let me ask this question. Until we can get some, because there's parts of this here that I want to see enacted, because the code department needs something to give them the teeth over there on some other issues. What if we were to take something out of here right now about the newspaper part, and then come back at a later date on something?
I think what they've suggested as far as from the newspaper publishing viewpoint is perfectly acceptable. The only thing we have a little concern about is some of these property owners that may or may not be able to expeditiously get that delivery stopped that may be littering their driveway. That's the only tool that we're sort of taken out of the toolbox. But they have assured us that they have a system that will allow that to happen. If that didn't happen, we could always come back and find out why it's not happening and work with them. I mean, it's not something that we're going to have a huge pushback on, I don't believe.
Is the enforcement, Mr. Mayor, the same as, say, tall weeds and grass? Somebody's got to complain. It's not like codes enforcement.
That's right.
We're not going
to drive around looking for these problems. It's typically going to be complaints. Of course, from time to time, you might report a complaint or you might report a problem at a location. We'll follow up, but we're not going to be out there with a full-time person trying to be sure that people are not violating these things.
Well, I think right now on Coast Department, they got just one person now.
We have limited resources, but this does give us a tool when it's an exaggerated problem for us to take care of it.
So in saying that, what is being recommended from the News Journal side is, or from the attorney from the News Journal, is this amendment here going into this document.
Yes, sir. And I don't think that there's any legal problems with that. You know, it would be fine from a legal perspective. Like the mayor said, there is one element, there's one little piece of this. I mean, it's a fairly encompassing resolution, so there will be one piece that is taken out. And that's, I mean, again, it's a policy decision. It's entirely up to y'all.
Yeah, I got another question about another part, not the newspaper, so I'll wait a minute and see if any of you got any more questions on the newspaper part in this ordinance.
I guess I just want to reconfirm exactly what we're accomplishing by deleting newspaper from the section 13A. I'm a little slow, I'm sorry.
No, I know. From my perspective, it is not a change because under 13, both A and B, the intent was to exempt U.S. mail and newspapers, so long as you are a newspaper. And the definition is where you go to see what is a newspaper and what is a handbill, non-commercial handbill, commercial handbill. And the handbill would be covered, but newspapers were not intended to be. So I took it out only because it seemed to argue newspapers in and then exempt newspapers, and it didn't make sense.
So it's not really a huge deal then?
At least not to me now.
So we could leave it in?
I think it is an exemption already in
Right.
13B.
Right.
So it is.
What if we changed, I got an idea, what if we changed in 13B to put solicited newspapers?
I think that is a problem for the newspaper because we do deliver unsolicited newspapers from time to time in the hopes that, one, we get information to you that you need. Because you can hand out newspapers on the sidewalk and the city cannot stop you from doing that. Nobody's paying for it, but you're out there town crier about all the things that the commission is doing or not doing, and you want to be informed about that. So I think that's a problem from our side.
Can't you mail them?
You can mail them.
Can't you mail them?
And we do mail them.
And instead of throwing them out, can't you mail them? That would solve the problem, right?
I don't think it doesn't solve the unsolicited issue for people who are saying that there is an unsolicited newspaper problem with building up on someone's property.
I think that's coming in your mailbox compared to your
Driveway.
though, which would
But
take care of this issue.
Maybe I misunderstood what we were just talking about. You're talking about from time to time you distribute these free newspapers, you throw them out. Why don't you mail them?
I'm not sure the difference between mailing and hand delivering to them.
And here it exempts mailing from being.
It does. It also
Trash.
exempts newspapers too. That's my point.
Probably cost prohibitive.
It does become mail, which is
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It becomes mail at that point in time, and that's my point. There's another way to do that. You know, there isn't. If you wanted to get those out, there's another way to do that rather than just throwing them out in somebody's driveway.
There is. I don't, as far as I can see, it is a newspaper, and it's the delivery method now that you want to regulate versus me handing it out person to person or the mailman.
I think it's what we call litter that we're trying to regulate.
True.
And to me, something that's thrown in my yard that I have not asked somebody to do that is litter. You say it's not, it's a First Amendment newspaper right, but to me, it's litter. And that's what I heard that guy say that night that got up and spoke to us. And he was very upset because I've called, and here are these things. They keep coming. Help me. And that's what he was saying, and that's, I'm not sure I can even guess of what this is, but I live in the city, and every Sunday morning at the end of my driveway is this unsolicited in a pink plastic thing, and I think it's got yes written on it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't get them every Sunday.
I get them every Sunday.
I probably get them now every Sunday.
And I got runners next to me that get them every Sunday that never pick them up. They're students. And they never pick them up. So I go over and pick theirs up. And that's what bothers a lot of folks. It really is what bothers me. I'm not sure that's a newspaper. It might be a handbill.
It doesn't like it's a newspaper. I mean, and I guess the question is if that came in your mailbox, how would that change the fact it's being delivered every day to you and you've got to go to the mailbox and get rid of it because it is a nuisance to you? as far as regulating it by the city and the state.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm trying to say is that if the newspaper didn't want to trash and wanted to distribute all these, they could mail it instead of throwing it out in the yard, right? They could do that.
Yes.
And then it wouldn't be litter as defined under this ordinance, correct?
It would not be, and neither is a newspaper on the driveway is not litter.
That's where you're disagreeing with what's right here when we talk about unsolicited.
Well, I'm not trying to argue. I don't think that's what is in this ordinance.
Okay.
It is, newspapers are not litter. They can be if they're left on the driveway or in the yard on and on and on. Someone can make a complaint, they could be litter.
Is that not what this thing is saying, that unsolicited newspaper is litter?
I think there's some confusion about what a 13B trumps 13A.
Okay.
And I don't think it's clear. I mean, it appears to trump 13A, just on the face of it, and I'm not sure we really considered that.
There's a lot of stuff in here, you know, I don't know how many pages this is, and newspaper is a kind of a small
Piece of it.
But there's a lot of complaints that come out of, I don't know whether that pink thing is, I can't even remember the name of it because I never even opened it up.
I think Andrew can tell you.
I can tell you what it is. First of all, it's a product of the Tennessean, so.
There you go.
I'm gonna get this to you so you can call me and that gets taken care of. The second thing, it's supposed to be, it's a shopper that is distributed by the Tennessean that is, it is free and it's supposed to be consent delivered, unlike some of the things you're talking about. Someone at that property at some point answered a phone call to say, yes, I want that, and we deliver that because we have to audit that consent to those advertisers. So that being said, if you do not want it, please give me those addresses and we'll remove it because that's a cost to us if you don't want it. Because we'll
Is that a newspaper or a handbill?
If it's just shopping stuff and there's no.
It contains shopping news. It does. There's
Shopping news.
I would say that would tend not to be a newspaper under the definition here.
From time to time, it's got an article about Sam Davis, or Daughters of the Confederacy, or...
It might have something about which handbag is in style this day, or which color is it.
So
Yes, your personal.
It's not in the form of a newspaper.
He's reading it now. Well, I want to come back again, I'm slow. I see 3 changes on here that you've recommended. And, right, is that correct? The definition and then newspaper deleted twice.
Right.
I believe, I got the impression that the deletion of newspaper was a technical, maybe a grammatical technical issue that you thought would be better served if it was deleted, but not a huge issue to your clients per se.
No, it simply is that since newspaper is defined,
right,
then newspaper is a newspaper. It's not a non-commercial handbill.
I guess what I'm asking, it's not going to affect your business.
It will, in fact, that's a very broad question. I don't know if it affects my business or not until I get a citation and have to go in and defend whether it's intended to be a newspaper covered by this ordinance here or not. I've not really heard that the newspapers are the big complaint around the county. It's litter and stuff that's on the side. If it sits there, whether it's a newspaper or not, it can be litter and can be enforced.
So if we were to add the section in here with your definition and then leave newspaper in these other 2 sections, that would further define for you what a newspaper is, and then help us also with the other handbills / what could be considered other newspapers that aren't published weekly that might be thrown out.
The only concern I have is that you define newspaper one way and then you try to include it as a non-commercial handbill later on. And that's not the definition of newspaper.
But if 13B trumps A, then that's sort of a moot point.
And that just helps us if we have to go to court about it.
Well, that would be your order.
I think there's an issue here that maybe we could do some redrafting to make this a little bit more clear. That is a possibility, because I can see the issue of confusion here. And again, I'd like to take some direction from you guys exactly how you want me to address this.
I'll say this. Again, the codes department, and leave the newspaper part out of it, in my opinion, right now. But there's some things in here that our codes department, for example, I've got a deal out there in my district on Kingwood Lane that they've been trying to get in court, and it's the biggest eyesore that you ever want to see, and the people out there are tired of it. This right here will help the codes department take care of problems like that, and I know other rural commissioners have got these same problems in their districts. I'm more, not that I'm not worried about newspapers piling up littering, I don't mean it that way, but I'm more worried about those type of situations than I am someone having 2 or 3 newspapers in their yard. That's something that some of these people out there on Kingwood Lane would love to have that problem more than they would what they got out there now. I want something to help those people, and I know some other people in the rural areas have got them. Will, Trey, Jack, Steve, I know y'all, we got them. We've all got those same problems. And the codes department's hands are tied. You know, there needs to be some way of taking this back and redoing it. It sounds like, because there's some confusion. But there's parts in here that I want to see move on. You know, to be able to take care of some of these situations. And how you do that, that's a $64,000 question.
Well, we deferred the action on this for 60 days. When does that 60 days up, Ms. Shelton?
I believe this is 60 days.
So okay, so either it's got to be voted up or down, or I guess we could defer it again at the next meeting,
And potentially have Jeremy make some changes and present those.
Well, let me ask this question then. Something needs to be done. Do you think in 30 days, another 30 days, we could?
Well, I think that I could work with Mr. Willis and we could try to figure out this issue. Now, again, one of the things that we've got is I need direction from you guys how you want me to handle it, because this is not a Jeremy Cawthorn question.
Right.
This is a you guys question. Right. Because I have no problems if you guys say, hey, we'd really like you to go back and kind of clarify this so we can resolve this newspaper issue, and hopefully amicably we can resolve it. And that's fine. We could, I mean, again, whatever you guys want to do. If you want me to go back to the drawing board, try to get some better clarity on this, I do think that given the fact that Mr. Willis and I are at a bit of logger's heads already on this, that maybe revisiting it could be a good idea. We could adopt Mr. Willis's suggestions. Again, I don't find there to be anything legally problematic. However, that's a policy decision, because that removes an enforcement mechanism that you guys currently have or could potentially have. So it is entirely up to you guys how we handle this, and I don't mind. I'm here at you for whatever you guys want me to do. I'm happy to do it.
Mr. Willis cited a couple of cases there, and I saw you make some notes, and I'm assuming that you're probably going to look into those a little bit. And,
yes, sir.
And would it be prudent for that to happen, you guys, once again, another 30 days, you two guys get together and come up with what you think is what we're looking for, and that is not to excuse unsolicited things, and also protect those First Amendment rights. And there has to be something there that you've also indicated that you kind of have a feel for what he's asking for, and make sure that those things are okay with you. and then okay with him, and just bring back those compromise changes, whatever they are, next month. We put this thing off, we've been talking about this for 6 months, is that right? I'm not sure that another 30 days is going to kill anybody or anything, and when it's done, I'd really like to see it done as well as we know how to do it. And, you know, these guys have asked us to wait, and we've waited, and they've brought these concerns that are absolutely positively legitimate, even though that there are some citizens out there that complain about handbills or newspapers or whatever they are. Then I'm thinking that we can do a little bit better job and make that a little bit more clear. And I'll put that in form of a motion that we allow you two attorneys to get together and talk about those sections that Mr. Willis has brought to our attention, and make sure that their interests are covered, but the citizens of the county, as far as litter, is covered as well. And I'll put that in form of motion and bring it back and give us a document that is a compromise document that we can vote on next month.
So by next meeting?
Yes. November, our November meeting.
Is this, well, before we get a second, is this something, since it was brought up at the commission meeting and then deferred here, do we have to, for 60 days, how do we need to bring that up in the commission meeting, or can we just report that it's been?
I think if we don't take action on the original document, that resolution dies. But you can bring forward another one, a modified document, bring it forward whenever the steering committee pushes it back. What would you say, Ms. Shelton?
I didn't watch that meeting, so I don't know.
They simply deferred action on it for 60 days. So if we don't take any action on 60 days, then that resolution is not standing to be acted upon. Therefore, we'll just bring a new resolution after we maybe make changes to this document. You bring it back forth again. I think that would work.
If the committee feels comfortable in making these changes here tonight, I'm okay with that too. I know that we've delayed it simply because we've had a request for some input. We've got that input now, and I think we ought to blend those two and make sure that our bases are covered and they are okay with First Amendment rights and those kinds of things as well. I don't want to stifle the press. I don't think anybody in here wants to do that. Our concern is garbage, litter, and there are places that are being dumped on in the county. People, washing machines, those kind of things, and we're really concerned about those types of things as well.
And my clients don't want to stand in the way of a litter ordinance, and we would be fine if you want to make my changes and adopt it, and then work with the Codes Department and county legal to come back with some changes to the definitions that you guys want to see done. And I don't want to stop you from getting your enforcement out there and working on the biggest problems.
We've got a motion. Did we have a second? You want to read? Did you read that motion?
Direct the county attorney's office to continue to research the cases provided by Mr. Willis and provide a compromise change to the anti-litter resolution next month to meet the needs of the county.
We have a second.
I'll second it, but I want to add my comments too.
Yes,
if you're looking for some direction, what I would suggest is that I would like to see an opt-out option. Just make it clear that if you don't want it, just have some kind of mechanism that they can request. And then it becomes litter.
That's for newspapers, handbills, anything.
This is talking about the whole deal coming back next month. Within that, where have we heard about the rural part as far as farm part? We've had some questions about that being brought up.
We didn't have any feedback to my knowledge. I know I talked to Mr. Cope and Jeremy. Getting,
Buddy.
yes, sir.
I had some calls before the last time from some Farm Bureau members, and it seemed like you may have tried to reach somebody over there, but they were worried about, landowner myself, some of that land's in, down country lanes, and all people go back there and dump garbage, then the landowner getting cited for when somebody, they don't have a clue even been back there and dump garbage, and all of a sudden they're getting penalized for that. So I would hope that if we do take this back, we would reach out again, maybe to a representative Farm Bureau, maybe Mr. Pettis Reed, our new Planning Commission member who's with the State Farm Bureau and is a Rutherford County resident, and let him get a little bit of input to protect the agriculture areas.
We did reach out to them, we sent them a copy of it, but we didn't get a response, but we can try
I had
again.
2 or 3 calls from people that were Farm Bureau members, and they may have slipped through the cracks, and the leadership didn't realize people were asking for participation. If it does get deferred, I would hope that they would at least be attentive to reach again.
Yeah.
That'll give them time to respond.
Once again, that motion was to get everything out and the way it needed to be, but if we can do it tonight, I'm okay with that too.
In this, what Mr. Willis is offering here, there's in what Trey was talking about, there's no opt-out clause in this, is that correct?
Well, the opt-out clause stays in here, it took out the unsolicited newspaper because of Section B saying newspapers are exempted from this section.
So there is a opt-out clause in here, though.
I haven't changed the opt-out, I just took out unsolicited newspapers from that.
The changes will take out
the
unsolicited newspapers.
Newspaper from the opt-out group.
Right.
It will clearly do that, whereas now it's kind of up for debate whether or not you can opt out under this resolution.
Trades, what you're talking about, some type of a notice from some of these that, some number that you can call to opt out? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, I thought, when earlier in the meeting, I asked, did the amendment to the original ordinance where you can opt out? And the answer is yes. And I said, well, the amendment does, and it says you may not have that right to opt out. I just want to make it clear that if I get in a newspaper, or anyone's getting some kind of newspaper that they're not asking for, that they can call and say, I don't want it. And at that point, it becomes leper. And there's some kind of enforcement that, and not that, I think, this organization does a pretty good job of doing that, but who knows in 5 years, some company's going to come and start throwing things out. But I think regardless, if someone doesn't want a newspaper, handbill, cat, dog thrown in their yard, they can have the right to call whoever says, I don't want it.
And you're saying that's in here?
Well, all I'm saying is that when the city's trying to regulate it, they said that in Section A, they talk about unsolicited newspapers being handbills. And then in Section B, they said, this section is not intended to address newspapers. Newspapers are exempted. And I'm confused. And I think when we get to court, if I get a citation, get to court, we're going to be arguing about whether newspapers are exempted or not. And I understood that newspapers were to be exempt.
No, I'm not talking about being exempt, I'm talking about opting out.
Well, I think any citizen has the right to opt out of anything being delivered to their property.
But the suggested change in 13A says it removes the word newspaper.
And I think if it goes back, they can clear that up.
Yeah.
Well, on the policing of this, or the, how are you going to get that? I mean, the enforcement officer is going to cite the owner, probably, and then the owner's going to say, well, no, I called and opted out. And how are they going to verify that? How they going to verify that?
Well, they got a copy of the written request they made to opt out.
There's got to be a paper trail somehow.
Yeah.
That they throw it in somebody's yard.
And I mean, the citation will not, and again, even if it's a solicited newspaper and folks allow it to accumulate, that's when they would get cited. So they probably, they've run afoul of this resolution too, because if somebody throws a newspaper out in your yard, or you get the Daily News Journal, and you pay for it, it's out there, you're not going to get cited because you left the newspaper out for the day. It's that accumulation effect, so.
What if, that's like me and Jeff, we're going on vacation next week.
Bunch of whatever.
And then if we don't have somebody pick up our newspapers or whatever for the whole week, and somebody throws out handbills or whatever, I guess we could be, under this part, could we be cited or not?
Well, not necessarily under that part.
Under the old part, we could.
In theory, you could. And again, one of the things about this is it's pretty difficult to define exactly what litter is and what circumstances and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, in theory, if you go out of town for a week, it's possible. I mean, it's possible.
But we've only got one person over at the codes department that's actually doing enforcement.
The more
Not go out down.
the more we discuss this, the more difficult this is going to be to enforce. I think the people that are going to enforce this, we may need to spend a lot more time determining if this is really a document we can enforce.
Yeah.
So I think the idea about deferring this for 30 days is wise. Give the Farm Bureau some time to respond, for which they haven't responded. Give our codes people some time to see what we think we can do or how we're going to really manage this process.
Right.
In addition to talk about a complex set of issues about this unsolicited distribution.
Okay.
Since all we're talking about, and not that it's not important, but is just putting this off for 30 days, tabling it for 30 days. That's the only thing we're talking about here. I think I can vote with safety of not having a conflict of interest there. And with that in mind, I'm calling for the question.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
No,
All those in favor of the, sorry.
I was going to say, that's just a call for a question, right?
Right, yeah. All those in favor of the
Well, I'm sorry.
resolution?
Does this prohibit us from talking about other issues in here for the direction? If we call for the question? Because there's a few more other issues I would like to address if we're going to send it back.
Well, we've called for the question, so we need to vote on this, but I'm
Okay.
sure if under other business or make any other comments.
Well, let me
It's just
withdraw my
something I want
motion.
Jeremy to know.
If he has some other issues, I'll just make it simple. Let me withdraw my.
Well, we've already voted on it.
Oh, we have?
Yeah.
Did it pass?
It did.
I didn't hear you say that. Okay, well, now we've got to vote.
Now we got to vote on the resolution. To just defer.
Well, the prevailing side on that, which was unanimous, somebody could bring it up, is that right?
Where's Anthony?
Not on
All we're doing is deferring it for 30 days.
yeah.
We can still discuss it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he can
Okay.
discuss whatever he
That's
wants.
what I was just asking.
Yeah,
Can we
we can discuss it. We need to vote on
Okay.
this resolution, and then we can discuss it.
We're missing Anthony, point of order now.
I'm telling you. All right, all those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
So it's been postponed
Thank you,
for
sir.
30 days.
Appreciate it very much.
30 days,
Thank you.
yes. Anything else you'd like to discuss?
Well, just two things. On the helium balloon, if it's an accident, like my little 1-year-old grandson let go of a helium balloon this week.
$50.
Figure, okay. He
We
doesn't have it.
We can't enforce that. That balloon is long gone.
Okay.
We're going to have to get in the airplane and go check that out.
And another, just one other thing, is in this ordinance address, like trucks that pick up garbage that's not covered?
Yes, sir, it does. If it's spraying out all over the place, you have an affirmative duty to make sure you set your pickup truck situate your pickup truck in such a way that it's not spewing garbage all over the place.
So a pickup truck, like say, for example, in the Florence area, there's a lot of private, commercial people that pick up trash, and it's just a pickup truck with, you've probably seen them.
Yeah.
And they're not covered. Does it address something like that?
Yes, sir, it does.
It does.
Could you
Yeah.
point that to me, please?
It's, I think it's really,
Vehicles.
Section 7, truckloads causing litter.
So this would require those commercial business to cover their load?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And of course, on state highways and stuff, anyway, they're supposed to be tarped or covered anyway.
Yeah.
But I think when they're not covered is when they're loading, and then before they take it off or take it to the landfill, then they cover it. But I know what you're talking about, yeah.
And that'd be illegal.
Yeah.
What we see.
Right, right.
That's all I have to say.
Well, that wasn't bad.
Concerned about that balloon.
All right.
Maybe one more thing. Mayor Burgess mentioned that there may be a lot of issues in there about enforcing and some things that might not be real clear. I don't know what you guys are hearing, but everybody that I'm hearing from is demanding that we do something, pretty much. I had several folks where I work today ask about this. So they're asking that we do something. And I know it might be really difficult for us to work through this, but I think this is a topic that should not go away, and I think it's a topic that we really just need to work through to get the best that we can get out of it. And because I think folks are really asking that we do something. Even the ones that are complaining about unsolicited newspapers, you know, I think we have to do something there. Or at least I do.
I agree with you. I mean, it's a problem that's been long overdue on a lot of issues. And I've heard the codes director over when I've called about situations in my district, and he said a lot of times his hands have been tied. You know, he goes over here to the courts, and there's sometimes the ordinances are not there or don't have the teeth into them to actually do something about it. You know.
Well, I'm of course in the city, and we do have the same problems. We got exactly the same problems, but we go through the city. They call me, but
right. But you have the city that enforces that for you. With the road commissioners, we've got the county that enforce it.
I just wanted to point out, and we need to remember that there's going to be some enforcement issues, and if we pass this, and I think we do need to do something without question. We're going to have some enforcement problems, and we may have some personnel issues down the road here or it won't have any teeth.
There are enforcement issues no matter what.
I agree.
You know, wheel taxes, okay, there are enforcement issues there, but it's still the right thing to do.
Right. Let me ask you this, and I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I'm going to ask you anyway. David Jones has looked at this, is that correct?
You know, I believe that's true, but I can't tell you for certain because I have not given him a copy.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he has for sure, but it will be looked at carefully and discussed thoroughly.
Okay.
And we will be prepared to enforce whatever resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willis.
Thank you very much for
being here. Believe under any other business, the mayor has at least one item to cover with us.
This is sort of housekeeping, but I just want to do this because it's the right thing to do. If you recall, all of you have received a new copy of it's the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners Handbook. There's one section in here whereby there's the Board of Commission rules and regulations. We didn't really change anything of any substance. If you looked at that, you would find that we made 2 or 3 little technical corrections where there was a misspelled word or what have you. Under the purchasing committee, we also added whereby, you know, we've changed the amounts that you have to, up to $10,000, you don't have to take it to bids unless it's 10,000. So we added a few sentences there. There was one sentence under the steering committee election that was completely unreadable and unintelligible. We didn't know what it was there. We took that sentence out. So we've not changed the structure, but there's a little, every time when these changes are made, this started in 1955, every few years there's been an amendment. I'd like for this body to actually accept the changes that was prepared and distributed to you as of September the 16th. So we've already, that's on this page, but I just want to officially get the commission to say that they have agreed to these amendments. even though they're so very small and very.
Ask this question, is the $10,000 on the purchasing, is there a private act that we have to?
You guys changed that. That went through the commission.
Up to the 10,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That act was taken officially.
Okay. I was thinking we had to have something, I couldn't know if we did it or not.
Yeah, you passed the
through budget and brought it back through the full commission.
Yeah, that was brought through the full commission.
Move to approve the amendments.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, and the next is something a bit more important. Also, I included some documents in here, such as the Code of Ethics, the Legal Services Agreement, the Private Act for the County Attorney, et cetera. Those were just inclusions. And we do have now a new Legal Services Agreement. And as you are well aware, the Legal Services Agreement says that we cannot hire an outside attorney without county commission approval. Over the years, we have been using a firm called Leichner, Williams and Napolitan. They have been defending us in basically all of the cases that are going through United States Federal District Court, Middle Tennessee. So all of those cases they've been handling, we've been handling those, quote, as sort of grandfathered. We've been sued again. In fact, the sheriff's office, in fact, when Truman Jones was the sheriff, has been sued by a party, and we need to allow someone to defend this case. So what I have here, and I think we distributed, maybe, did we give y'all everyone, a letter from Mr. Cope to me suggesting that this needs to be done, and that he is agreeing, and I have agreed, that this is the person we should use to continue these types of defenses in federal court. So we have a resolution of the on employment of legal services for the defense of Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, and this is for a specific case, but if you'll notice the last paragraph number 2 on that second page, that certain other cases involving actions in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Tennessee may be in the future be assigned to Attorney Randy Mantooth of the law firm of Leichner, Williams, Dooley, and Napolitan. So this also gives us the ability for these types of cases only to do that. And
that's the only part I didn't really gel too much with. I understand this is a case before us, and I hated to lump really two different things into one. I'd rather see, personally, Mayor, when it's time for us to address this issue here, it comes back to us in a separate form.
We can do that. I mean, it just, these types of cases are with some frequency. We'll have to do this maybe about every month. We'll have one. Ms. Shelton?
And because of the elections and whatnot, we are a little behind. You know, there are time frames.
Because this one is
cases.
Under Truman Jones, the sheriff here.
Right.
Not under our new, okay.
Yeah,
so potentially you could change this to require notification when a case has gone down there, but there are time frames, and we're behind on that time frame in this case because of circumstances we couldn't control.
If I could.
But note this. We're getting this at the same rate that we're going to pay our county attorney.
Right.
Our county attorney does not want to take these cases in federal court. They don't want to have to travel to Nashville to defend these. These people are much better equipped,
right.
In fact, more experienced, and at the same hourly rate. And it's not, so again, we won't do it unless the county attorney and I agree.
And Mayor, I don't mind making a motion in effect to approve this first one on the sheriff, and if we could get this one in a separate form, just as a separate total deal, not to lump it together, I wouldn't mind approving it that way, and it reach the full commission and not have to come back to us or anything. I'm not talking about holding it up or stalling it out. I'm just saying, could we separate it?
All you got to do is strike number 2. If you don't want that on it, just take it out.
Okay.
We'll come in here every time there's any attorney, federal court or otherwise.
I think that's what we were trying to do anyway. I mean,
were you saying, Steve, that you wanted to give him that flexibility, just doing it in a different resolution? Is that what you were saying?
Yes. Number 2 would be in a different resolution.
Oh, you want to make these two
separate? It would be two separate ones.
Okay, that's okay if you want to do it that way.
But if it's not time for this one, what it looks like it's not time yet.
It's already time for number 1.
No, I'm talking about number 2.
Oh, no, it's, number 2 is an open.
That's what she's saying.
I think we've already had a second lawsuit filed, I think.
That I don't know about.
That
I don't know about that.
Well, let me ask you, would number 2 take care of just that one lawsuit that's behind?
No, it's future lawsuits.
It's all future.
Number 2 is all future stuff.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I don't.
But we could include language with notification, and you could always rescind or say, no, we don't want them to handle it, pull it back, we want someone else.
What kind of concerns me is that if we're falling behind, because
this is-
if we're sued, you got to react.
It's
There's a
federal
timetable,
court.
and
You only got
the
so
commission
many
will meet
days.
every week, so
Because
I want to
we
make
got
sure
30 days.
paragraph 2 gets through.
I understand, but I didn't want it to be an open, ongoing, I mean, I think part of the county commissions, and I could be wrong, I think part of the county commissions deal with setting this all up, that we know each case that's going before and what we're subbing out and who we're subbing it out to and how much we're subbing it out for. You know, I mean, it was just that little bit of a hands-on that we have on it, and besides that, that's it. You know, it's not a dragging you through each time, you know, it's
Well, we're
just.
going to have to come through each time on every one of these federal cases, I mean, or any cases, what you're suggesting, is that correct? Each
Well,
one individual, every time we'll have.
If it's a separate case, yes, sir.
Yeah,
If it's a
these
separate
are-
lawsuit, yes, sir.
These are all separate lawsuits.
Because we don't put it in this big bundle of, yeah, whoever you want to do and whatever you want to do it with,
What if?
that it's open.
What if it's the one that Becky and the mayor are talking about, if we're one behind now?
I believe we've had two.
Two?
We've had another one filed since the presentation of this letter.
And what, they gotta have 30 days to get those in?
It
I
may
don't
be
know for
20
sure.
days.
20 days?
Typically, they have,
20, it's 30 in the
have to
local
make some sort of
courts,
response.
In our legal services agreement, we had a lot of discussion on that, Steve. and
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what we resolved on that, but a lot of the discussion was around not tying Mayor Burge's hand and allowing him to hire representation to begin that defense as soon as possible. And I think what he's saying here is that if he can get those services for the same price that our county attorney would be doing them at, why not give him the flexibility to do that? And then report to us that case and what's going on at that point in time. He can just bring them back and say, this is what we're doing. And that's what you were kind of suggesting earlier, right?
With this firm in particular, because this is the firm that's been used repeatedly, years even before I was here, to defend these federal types of lawsuits, law enforcement particularly. And this group has done a wonderfully good job on that.
Well,
Our county attorney really thinks they are the best equipped to handle it. So, but we can bring it every time. I mean, but we just have to run the risk of it if we're going to be delinquent, and that could happen.
Commissioner Sandlin, can I suggest, I think Becky mentioned that we could request notification each time. I think that might be I understand what you're saying, I agree with you. I mean, we want to know what's going on. At the same time, if we're just going to approve every one, which I think we will, because that's what has been going on in the past, and we haven't had any problem with these people defending us, is if we request notification, you say we have the opportunity to rescind that if we wanted to. You say, no, I don't want you to for some reason. And if we could add that in section 2 or a different resolution.
Well, we could potentially say if it's Leitner Williams, we'll provide notification, but if they choose a different firm, it would have to come to the commission first.
This right here only allows us to choose Leitner Williams. This is the only firm that we've allowed to choose for these federal cases in Middle District of Tennessee Court.
Report those cases back to the commission.
If you pass this as it is, we would continue to use that firm for new cases. We would just simply report them to you when they occur.
That's kind of keeping us up.
Can we try that for a while? I mean, if it doesn't work out really for
we'll give you a report
for the commission, then hey, we really want.
It is the commission's duty and authority to, and they must approve the use of any outside counsel. But this would give us a narrow focus on just these types of cases.
Mr. Rogers, I believe, did address the 20 days. And I'm kind of agree with Commissioner Gooch. I don't like that word delinquent that we just used a minute ago, and it was possible, particularly since we don't meet in July. And if the lawsuit is filed on a specific day, even in 1 month period, that we'd have to respond, and the only way we could respond was if we called a special call meeting to get it in within the 20 days, which we didn't want to do.
Or Mr. Cope's firm respond. They'd have to respond as attorney of record somehow. And he strongly recommends in these types of cases that we use this firm. They have been so successful for us.
I say we just stick with this then, and we just be notified on as each one keeps coming forward, and we'll work with that for a while and see if that works.
I also like to know how it was disposed, how that case was disposed, what the end result would be.
Okay.
Is that possible?
That's possible, but that's a long journey, and you're going to get tired of these reports. They take months and months and months, and it will be very convoluted. But we can do it.
The final outcome is what I'm talking about.
The final outcome, we can just be patient.
Well, and I think one of the things that we were talking about within this process too was final dollar amount of what it costs to do this thing, or what it costs the county, you know, on a per case basis type thing, and it was quite extraordinary, you know, on a per year type basis of what all we were going through. It just puts the county commissioners in the understanding of how much legal services we're actually using. Because if we someday here go into our own, which we're in that process, then it's going to have a better handle and actually a basis of what we're looking at.
I agree with you, Steve. I think it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You got a motion on the floor?
That's all.
I make a motion to approve the resolution that the mayor's presented.
Second.
And add in the resolution that.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes.
Approve as presented, amending to include language requiring a report to the commission on each suit filed, although can go on and send it to Lightner Williams.
That's my motion. You make me sound good.
Now, excuse me, before we vote on this, this involves dollars. So I think we likely have to recommend this to also go through budget.
And forward to the budget committee.
That'll work.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Any other business?
Give it a second.
No other business. We are adjourned. Thank you all.